Welcome to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. Today we're talking about teens and money. What do parents pay for, and what do kids pay for? Join us as we discuss clothes, sports, cars, college, and everything in between. Let's get started. Hi, listeners. I'm Marie, and today I am joined by Mindy. Mindy, so good to see you today.
Hey, Marie. Great to see you. Always love being here.
Yes, and we are actually down a guest this morning because Julie's on vacation.
I know. We're going to really miss Julie's wisdom today. So, Julie, have fun at the beach.
I know. I really feel like a fall beach trip sounds awesome.
Yeah, it does. Totally does. Yes.
But we are going to be talking about something that a lot of people have asked us to talk about, Mindy. And I think that you and I are both like in the throes of it.
Yeah.
Because the teenage years are so expensive.
They really are. And we're both in the thick of it. We have all kinds of kids. And so even though we're down a couple, we still have kids left. So
I know.
We've been going through this for quite a few years.
Yes. So we have some wisdom to share, but we're also still learning because we're still raising at the same time.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. But several listeners have asked us to do an episode on teens and money. How do you decide what parents pay for, and how do you decide what teens pay for? And I can remember talking with a mom of an older teen before I really had teens, and she was having to get her college-age daughter's car repaired, and she was looking into getting a car for her son. And I just remember thinking, wow, those years are going to be expensive, and I had never really given cars much of a thought.
Oh, I know, because I remember when our kids were little and we had friends that were talking about saving up for their kids' college already. And like Bryce and I looked at each other and we thought, like, are we supposed to pay for their college? You know, like, are we supposed to pay for their cars? And we thought, well, that's what everybody else seems to be doing. Is that what we're going to do? And we had so many discussions about this.
Right. Well, actually, I was going to say that Steve and I didn't have so many discussions. Like, we kind of got there and then dealt with it as it came. So listeners, you're going to get two different kind of histories here. And if you are somebody who's a planner and you already know what you're going to do, that's awesome. And if you're here now and you're like, what am I going to do? You can work through it.
I was going to say, yeah, we had discussions, Marie, but we didn't make decisions until later. We had no idea what we thought we should do. And so literally with our first two kids, we were scrambling is the word I would use. And we are much better and more planned and maybe, kind of more of a plan of action with the last two children. But yeah, we're at the same boat.
And I will say that I think that your own family of origin plays into it.
Yep.
Like how your parents dealt with car expenses, college expenses, whatever plays into how you expect that the world works and how you might work with your own kids.
It's so true because Bryce and I realized that our backgrounds were completely different when it came to certain issues or certain things that, he thought, oh, well, that was just provided. And me, I was like, well, no, I had to actually, that wasn't given to me.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. And so it takes a lot for a couple to get on the same page and figure out what they think they want to do with their own children.
And there's so many things that we're going to talk about today. And I definitely don't want listeners to feel like we're saying the way we did it is right. Because we've changed, we learn from other people, and also it's just a way that we decided on. There's so many different ways you can go with this. It's dependent on how many kids you have, how much income you have, how you were raised. Like, there's just so many different things.
There are, because I remember even with our oldest child, we still had college debt. We were young when we had her and we still had college debt with her. And we have joked that the last child, Nathan, he's just going to get everything handed to him. That's the joke in the house. That will not happen. But but I mean, you can't guarantee income through all of your kids. I mean, it's just, kids are expensive.
Right. So let's start with some of the bigger expenses of kids. We can kind of start with some of the small big expenses that they kind of start you out on. Like, I remember the first big expense that my teenager had was a phone. And I think she may have, how old are you in 6th grade? Are you even teenager or are you maybe only 12?
10, 11, 12. I mean, there's a range. So I would say,
So
around.
maybe it was more like preteen. But at the
Yes.
time, the phones were flip phones. They were $10 a month to add to a plan. And, I think you got a free upgrade just for signing them up. Like it's not the expense that it is today.
It is a lot more expensive today. I totally agree with you.
So what do you do for phone, Mindy?
Well, with the phones, we've pretty much, our rule now that we've developed over the years is we will pay for a plan when we need to get a hold of you. And we would put probably so much money towards a phone. It's kind of changed with each child because some kids are like, well, I really want this phone. And we're like, that's more than what we were going to spend. So you're going to have to make up the difference. Like we'll put this much towards a phone. If you want to get, this really expensive phone, you're going to have to put some money. But that we wouldn't pay for a plan until it was us that needed to get a hold of them. And that typically was in like middle school if they started a sport. And so, I mean, even just yesterday, my middle school son, we went to the wrong place to pick him up and he was waiting for us for 20 minutes. He doesn't have a phone plan yet.
Oh, okay.
And I was already thinking, oh, it's time.
Yes, that is so true because I know my daughter, she had just started school sports in 6th grade and it was nice to be able to say like, oh, I'm running 10 minutes late or where do you need to be picked up or whatever.
Exactly. Those are the situations that drove us to do it.
Yeah, I think we've done something similar. Now phones are like several $100s or more.
Yeah.
And so my youngest are now 16 and 18. So they have jobs. So we've kind of said like, you basically trade in your old phone, do it on a time when you'd get a deal, make up the difference, and we'll pay for your actual phone plan. But they buy their own phones now. And that was a big relief. I think we just started that like 2 years ago. And so now when I upgrade my own phone, I don't have to feel guilty because they could upgrade theirs if they want to. They could pay for it.
Right. That's the boat that we have kind of landed on now over time. And I'm telling you, I'll tell our listeners, look, my kids are always coming home and telling me how all their friends have this brand new phone. And I'm like, must be nice. Stinks you're in this family.
Right. Right. I know. My one son's camera doesn't work, which you would think, oh, no big deal. He's a boy. But he said it's actually really annoying. Like you have to take pictures of things sometimes. I don't know if it's like screenshots or just whatever, but he still won't upgrade. So
that's his choice, though.
It is. It is his choice. Maybe he's waiting for Black Friday. I'm not sure.
Right.
Well, I know that computers can be a big expense. Do you provide your kids with their own computers?
I don't know about you, Marie, but like my kids didn't need a computer as much, my older two, but I feel like that's kind of a given now with my younger kids. And so, of course, this school year, the school is providing a Chromebook. But what we had at home is we used to only have one laptop in the house. And then we started noticing like they needed to do more with it. And so Bryce and I are like, okay, well, we need to have our own laptop.
Right.
And so then we had what we called the kid laptop and the adult laptop. And so we had two. But now like my youngest son is buying pieces and it's mainly for gaming.
Okay.
That he wants to have like a computer at home, a desktop.
Right.
And I'm
right.
like, what kid wants a desktop these days? we upgraded to the laptop and you're going back to a desktop.
And everything old comes around again.
Yes. I don't know. How about you?
Yeah, that's similar to how we did it. We had, a family desktop and we had a family laptop. And, my older two, that's what they used their graduation money for when they went to college, was to buy their own laptop because then they would truly need it. And also, I knew they would truly take care of it, having paid for it themselves.
Okay, well, we're exactly on the same page because Abby and Grant both used graduation money to buy their own laptop when they went to college. So they didn't have their own before then.
But I will say it's really nice this year with the Chromebooks from the schools. That has been a nice thing because no one's fighting over the computer because they each have one.
I know. I'm like, come on, people. Y'all could have made this better a long time ago.
I know. Yeah. Well, some other big expenses that can come up are sports. I know that you can invest a ton of money,
Yes. Yes.
equipment, fees, all that kind of stuff.
Camps, traveling. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. If you're on a travel team, I've
Hmm.
never had just astronomical expenses. We've never been on travel teams or things like that. I never have asked my kids really to contribute to sports expenses.
Right.
How do you guys do it, Mindy?
All right. Well, it kind of depends on the kid,
Mm-hmm.
because each kid kind of has their own thing that's expensive. Grant has by far with the sports been the most expensive, but he was the one that was wanting to do more. Like last summer, if you'll remember, we did like 3 weeks out of the summer, we were traveling around the country to football camps.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was something that was, we called it an investment.
Sure.
And so he was aware of the cost. And what we did kind of almost with everything, like we said, we're going to pay for this. Anything over and above that, you're going to have to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, we'll pay for you to have this private coach once a month or once every couple months or whatever. But if you want to meet with him more, you're just going to have to foot the bill.
I see. Yeah.
But see, Grant was old enough. He had a job at the time, like
Mm-hmm.
we could do that. Sports is, again, it's subjective with each child.
Right.
So,
Well, what about clothes? I mean, you have a daughter. I have 3 daughters. They can really like to shop. How do you decide who pays for what?
okay. So we have a rule in our house. We provide what you need. You provide what you want.
That's a good one.
Okay. And I have said that because there's a couple times a year that I felt like I would take Abby shopping. Like she would need to upgrade just with like a pair of jeans or a pair of shoes, and the boys too.
Mm-hmm.
But for her, shopping is a joyful experience, and for the boys, I'm forcing them to go
Right.
because they have holes in the knees, or
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
their shoes have holes in them or their socks have holes in them. So with Abby, that was one of the expensive things with her.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, so we would buy some stuff, but she always kind of knew the budget if we were going on a shopping trip.
Right.
We would have to talk beforehand and have a plan of action. Like you
Mm-hmm.
don't take a girl to the mall and just say, "What do you need?"
Right. The list will never end.
You are in trouble, sister, if that's what you're doing.
True.
So I would always have Abby make a list of the things like, let's go through your closet.
Mm-hmm.
What do you need? What pieces are you missing? Oh, I could really use a pair of black jeans.
Yeah.
Some intentionality. Going to blow some money and have some fun. That's different.
Right.
But if we're trying to meet needs, then I need a list. I need to make sure you actually need that. Can you sell some clothes, on
Mm-hmm.
social media to friends and, help with that or whatever. So if there
Right.
was something really like an expensive brand thing that she wanted, then she could totally go pay for that.
Yeah, I would definitely say that my boys have probably contributed. I don't think Isaac has ever contributed $1 to his wardrobe. And Davis maybe a total of $20 to his wardrobe because they truly are only buying what they need.
Yes.
And so I buy it because it's like pulling teeth to even get them to go to the store. If anything that is in their closet, it's probably something they needed. Whereas the girls, I mean, they have unending, in quotes, needs. So they have all had to step it up with what will you pay for? One of the things that maybe some moms will relate to too, with my older daughter, I got to the point where I just wouldn't buy her any clothes very rarely because I become very frustrated when I've spent money on something and then I don't see it worn.
Oh, it's sitting in the closet
Yes.
6 months later with the tag on it that thing she had to have. Oh.
So I got to the point where I might say, like, here's some money. You go buy what you need, but I almost don't even want to know what you bought with it because
Right.
I'm only going to look to see, did you use that wisely? And that's going to drive me nuts.
I mentally can't handle that.
Yeah. So I might say, like, you have X number from me to spend, and whatever you get, like, you're just going to have to. I don't even care what you're buying, but you pay for the rest.
Right. Oh, I know. And I've encouraged like friends to swap clothes,
That's a good idea.
and it is popular for girls right now to sell their things on social media. Like they come up with a whole nother Instagram account and it's just to sell their clothes. And I'm like, I really love that you do
Yeah.
that. Like that's the way to do it. Sell something. And even as an adult, I have to get rid of stuff in my closet before I want to add anything new. So
Mm-hmm.
it even works for closet space.
Right. Could you think of any other big expenses before we get to cars in college?
Well, I did think about there's just social events
Oh, right.
or, and that could include dances.
Mm-hmm.
So for girls, that can be very expensive. If you're looking at dress and hair and nails and makeup and shoes and things like that. And so I remember that being an expense.
You are so right.
Yeah, for girls. Guys, it was, oh, you have a nice pair of pants. Oh, let's just add a blazer.
Right. And it's probably you need new pants at this point anyways, because it's probably been a year since I bought any.
Yeah, we're going to a wedding in 6 months. So you're going to need that for that. Like it's very practical.
Right.
You're right. Need based. So actually, I'd love you to tell your story of how you handled Abigail's prom her senior year, because that actually helped me because we were behind the process from you. So as a mom, it really encouraged me to hear your approach with that. So I'd love to hear that.
Oh, sure. Well, I remember this was actually when she was a junior. It started, Mindy. My jaw absolutely dropped when she was a junior, and I got an email from a mom laying out what parents were supposed to do for prom. I seriously, I'd never heard or seen anything like it. It was really like planning a wedding. I mean, flowers, transportation, entertainment, food, dresses, hiring a photographer. I mean, it was all the features of a wedding. And I thought, oh my goodness, I've never been exposed to anything like this in my life. And I thought, how much money is this going to cost? And these are people that she's just going to go with. They're not even like her boyfriend. It's like just a date. It's like, this seems really... So I remember saying, and she wanted to go to 2. She was going to go to her own with this date, and then she was going to go to that kid. So it was 2 different nights with all the same stuff.
You have to have 2 different dresses. You cannot wear the same dress.
No. And I remember just deciding, fine, I'm going to set this amount of money. And this is what you have, Abigail. So like if the contribution for the photographer is X, well, that's coming out of that. If the contribution for the party bus is another amount, that's coming out of that. Like, the food, and then like whatever's left over is what you have for a dress and shoes. And she got really creative. I mean, it caused her, of course I heard, well, so-and-so's mom is spending $600 on the dress. And I'm like, well, no, that's not happening. Like you have, I'll just say like her whole budget was $500 for 2 proms, which some people might say, oh my goodness, that's huge. But that was really $250 a prom. She had to buy a dress, shoes.
If you look at the price of dresses.
Yes. I mean, other people may be like, that's all you gave her? But I will tell you, Mindy, that year, did you know that Target at that time sold like formal wear? You would have never known that. We got one of her dresses off Target.com. I think it was like $80. And then another one, I think we maybe got at Dillard's pretty cheap. But I mean, we found deals. I think she may have traded with a friend who was kind of like into makeup or, I don't remember what she did. But then next year she got even more savvy. She had discovered like way more online shopping. And by that time she bought her a really nice, dress that she absolutely loved for, I think it was like $78. And I mean, she just, and I never had that sinking feeling of like, oh my goodness, I invested $600 in this dress and she wore it once and now it sits in her closet. Because they're going to sit in the closet.
They do sit in the closet. We've moved dresses. Finally, I'm like, Abby, you got to keep these at your house.
Don't lie to yourself. The kid will never wear it again.
They don't. But see, look, like by setting a limit, though, I love that it created ingenuity in your daughter, who is a very creative individual. And she is like, that has helped her even be, I would think, a better photographer by knowing sites to go to, things to use for props or whatever. But like that ingenuity is because it was forced. Like if you had just said, I'll just buy you whatever, she would have never learned all of those wonderful tricks and hacks and really how creative she could be with it.
Right. She went to 2 proms her junior year and 2 proms her senior year.
Yeah.
And she worked it out.
Right. I'm saying there's multiple proms, there's homecoming. There is so much stuff that happens. And so yeah, we took a note from that. I was thrilled that you went before us. And we shopped early. Like if you know the next year something's coming up, we have been to boutiques and found things on the clearance rack, like from the last season. Abby has borrowed a dress. She's bought a dress off of a friend that wore it to like a different school. And so there's just different things that you can do. And thankfully, Abby's really good with makeup and I'm really good with hair.
Okay.
So we never spent money on those things.
Right.
In fact, like I mentioned before, we would have girls come to us and I would do their hair and Abby would do their makeup.
Oh, that's great. Yes. Well, that's the way to do it. And it's fun.
It is. It's one of those, you walk into the bathroom, there's stools and there's makeup everywhere. All the hair tools are out, the hairspray, like there's a fog of hairspray, but it is so fun and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Right.
With Grant, I'm like, please, can we buy you a new tie? Like, meet me after school. He's all sweaty coming from football practice. Like,
yeah.
You have to have clothes that fit.
Right. Yeah, I would definitely say that those social things, they can add up really quickly.
Oh, yes. I think other than that, I feel like we touched on kind of the main expenses that I think we felt during those teen years.
Right. Well, I would say one of the biggest expenses that comes up is a car. Before college. I mean, college is obviously the biggest. But, cars, and it runs the gamut on what people do. But I was going to share what we've done, and then you can share what you've done, Mindy. And I think just hearing what different people do is helpful. Right. We did not have a solid plan for this. And I regret not having a solid plan. That is a regret. My oldest, she kind of had to be forced to learn to drive. And we would have been waiting a really long time if we had said, you need to buy your own car. Or even if we had said, you pay half, we'll pay half. She just wasn't motivated. She would have never done it. And she's the oldest of 5. I kind of wanted her to be able to help drive people around.
Yeah.
So we really were the drivers of that, getting her license. And so her 4 younger siblings have really benefited from that because they all would have been able to contribute and they all had savings. But because you do something with the first one, you're kind of stuck doing it for all of them. So what we did was we said, well, we're just going to buy either a Honda, a Toyota, or a Nissan, something that has a really long life. And we said we were going to spend anywhere from like $300 to $3,500, which does not sound like much, but she had to drive a minivan for a while we waited, but we did get a great car off a friend's mom who was upgrading. And that thing, her husband still drives today, like 8 years later. He still drives it to work. So it has lasted. We felt like if we have 5 kids and we're going to buy a bunch of cars, that's about what we're willing to spend.
Yeah, you have to consider that, though, when you have multiple children.
You do. And it's been good for us. Now, I know my mom was kind of nervous about us not getting, like, spending more money on a car, especially since she was a girl. But she really was mostly driving to school and back. I mean, she didn't have long distances to drive. We didn't feel like she was going to be stuck by the side of the road.
And she had her flip phone. So.
Right. And even when she went to college, it was an 1.5-hour drive. It wasn't so far that if she had broken down, we couldn't have gotten in the car and gone to help her. And honestly, the thing has never broken down. She's never been stranded by the side of the road. None of my kids ever have. So, it's worked out well. That's also what we did for my son, although I think he would have been more than willing to help out. He would have probably been the type that would have said, okay, will you guys match it? And he may have gotten an even better car. I don't know. But his little $3,500 Toyota Corolla ran. He sold it last year, but it ran all through college. It was a great car, easy on gas. We also, and I think this was a mistake, made the mistake of saying we'll pay for your insurance. I would have liked to have asked for some contribution because they
Right.
did get in accidents.
Okay.
It's like that initial bump up is expensive. And then
Oh.
when they get in an accident,
Oh my gosh. For boys are already
Yes.
so expensive on the insurance.
but you feel bad telling your devastated kid who already got in an accident that now you're going to have to start helping to pay for insurance. It feels like a double punishment. And so we didn't, Mindy, but I regret that, listeners. I would
Yeah.
probably lay it out at the beginning. Like, do
Yeah.
you expect some contribution to insurance? How much do you expect towards the car?
Right.
Then we bought my middle son a car, again, around the same amount. No, actually, I spent a little more, Mindy. A few $100s more, maybe, $500 or $600 or $700 more. He totaled it within 3 months in a very low speed accident in a parking lot because he missed a stop sign, but some airbags deployed, which that makes the car be
car's
totaled.
gone. Yeah.
So I was sick about it because I was really happy with the car that we had bought him. And so he had to actually go get an older car, wasn't as nice, to kind of make up for the raise in insurance rates. And also, it again reinforced in my mind, these are teenage drivers. I'm not going to buy them anything that great that I've got to be feeling disappointed about when they bang it. Because they will bang it up. Every single one of my drivers has been in an accident, whether it was, big or small. So that's kind of what we've done. Now we have 2 more coming. And what we're thinking about doing is maybe putting in the initial $3,500 and then saying, hey, why don't you put in like $1,000 yourself? You'll get a little bit better car.
Right.
Now we're recognizing that we could ask for some contribution. They get a better car.
Right.
And on the insurance, we're probably stuck with that plan. But if they do get in an accident, I'm going to try and be more firm on supplementing the increase.
Oh my gosh. You live and learn, right?
Yes.
You don't know these things before you have a driver.
Right.
And there were certain stages that my kids hit that I just ignored it until we got there. Because I'm like, I just don't even know what to do about it. So I'm just going to ignore it until we have to deal with it.
Yes.
Well, cars and driving is something you do have to deal with.
It is.
And so what our plan is now.
Now that you've had 2 go through it. And really, does Jacob have a car yet?
He doesn't. He just turned 14.
Oh, okay. So he's got a little bit of time.
But I will say this, he is saving for a car. Because he's watched the older 2. So we were a little late to the game with Abby, but through Abby, and then when Grant was like right behind her, we were like, okay, we really have to have a sustainable plan that will fit every child, because they do. They look at their sibling like, well, you did this for them. So we will provide a car that they can borrow and drive through high school.
Oh, perfect.
And it's not their car, it's our car. And they will pay for their gas. Now, when they graduate and they're going to college, we will contribute, hopefully matching funds, up to $5,000.
Okay.
They can either just use the $5,000 or they can match funds and get a $10,000 car. Because in our situation, we were 12 hours away from Abby when she went to college. And so we knew that the car, even more, we had the pressure of, we're not there if it breaks down.
Right. No, that's a whole different ballgame.
It is. So it really depends on where your kid is going. And so that is our plan now. And I feel like it's going to be sustainable. Also, they have to pay for their insurance when they're in college. And I know that seems like a double whammy. You're like, you're going to make your college kid pay for insurance? Yes, we are.
I like that plan, Mindy. How can I go back to that?
I don't know. I said, just tell the younger kids, say, look, we made a mistake. Stinks to be you. But yeah, insurance is part of the deal. And they also, in college, they have to pay their phone plan too. So we actually, Bryce does, he will sit down with the kids, and the younger kids know it's coming. And so they do know that basically, and he might even lower the price a little bit, but he's getting them used to budgeting, getting them used to paying for things that they don't really want to spend money on. Like, what college kid is like, yeah, I'm working a part-time job, going to school full time, and I have to pay for my phone. I've got to pay for insurance on the car. And like, those are not fun things to pay for.
Sure.
But we're trying to kind of like take that Band-Aid off a little bit and get them used to paying for things they don't want to spend money on.
No,
Because who
that's
wants
true.
to spend money on that? Like, that's
No.
not fun. I'd rather go shopping and buy new clothes. Sure.
Yeah.
But you have to have insurance.
Oh my goodness. The day that my two were married and on their own insurance was so awesome. I don't, like when they're on your insurance, if it's icy, you have to worry about, are they going to drive and you're telling them they can't drive, or, bad weather or late at night or long trips. It's like, well, man, anything that happens is on me. I'm responsible then to pay for anything. Once it's their own insurance, you don't have to worry about whatever they choose. They'll be the ones paying for that.
And do you know, there was a week when we lived in Pennsylvania, our garage, we had a newer house, but the garage was very narrow. And Grant and Bryce both took a mirror off the side of their cars, like coming out of the garage. And in the same week that Grant took a mirror off on the side of the car, he hit a curb, rubbed up against a curb, like his tire had to be replaced.
Oh.
So Bryce said, look, I'll put like $500 towards this repair, but you have to fix the mirror first. Like he said, like, I'll help with the tire, but you have to fix the mirror first. Cause at that point, Grant was still borrowing the car from us. And so anyways, Grant is now purchasing that car from us, but yeah, like he had to pay for the mirror he took off. That was no fun for him.
No.
Working part-time at Chick-fil-A and spending a lot of money on this mirror.
Yes.
Like, it's not just a simple mirror anymore on cars. It's like, it's got defrost things and it's got all,
it's
what
got
I mean?
electronic components.
Oh my gosh. So,
yeah.
It's hard. Like but you know what? He's a better driver because he's more careful now because he doesn't want to spend money on it. So,
yeah,
unfortunately, they do learn from those things, but it's painful.
Right. So if you're listening, these are two examples of ways that people have dealt with cars. I mean, there's all different things you can do. You can pay for the car. They can pay for their own insurance. Yes. You can half pay for the car. You can pay for half the insurance. But maybe just think ahead of time. That would be my word of advice. Try to think about a sustainable plan through all your kids.
Right. We were talking earlier and you're like, well, when should we really start to think about, how to develop a plan? And looking back now, I would say start when they're toddlers.
Yeah.
Start teaching your toddlers out there that mom and dad provide for your needs. But if you want to go get that Thomas the Train, you're going to have to, do some chores around the house and save up your money.
They'll play with it longer that way too.
That's right. Really helps set the tone for the future.
Yeah. Well, once you do get, we haven't even touched on repairs. I mean, we have paid for all of our kids' car repairs. They haven't had a ton, and we've paid for all their maintenance. But I kind of wish that I had said, hey, I'll pay X number of dollars a year for repairs and maintenance, and you'll pay anything above that or something.
Oh, yeah.
So I wasn't just in for like every little thing that happened.
I think you're kind of like when your kid starts driving, you like hold your breath, you hold your breath that nothing happens. First of all, you're concerned about them out there on the road, themselves and also other people. Right. And so, I just feel like you're kind of holding your breath, like, hoping that you don't have to deal with repairs, but it's going to happen. You just hope not too much.
I know. Definitely. I've heard of somebody else recently who is going to have a family car that each teenager can drive. And then as they go to college, they buy one. I like that plan. It wouldn't have worked with my 3 younger ones because I have twins and then one who's only a year older. So they would still all be fighting over that same car. But if you have your kids spaced out, that could be a great plan.
I know. You're right. Everybody is different. Like sometimes grandma and grandpa have a car sitting there that they're not using and they'll just like, hey, use this car. And some couples that I know both came from families that their parents provided the car and they just they just assume they're going to provide and they're financially able to provide a car for their kid. And that's great. That just wasn't our situation.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's awesome if you can pay for the whole thing and you want to pay for the whole thing. I mean, that's awesome.
Go for it.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to college because that is by far and away the biggest expense of teenagers and one that I do think we start to think about when they're young, Mindy.
Oh,
Either
yeah.
we may not start to do anything about it, but we may start to dread just having to do something about it.
Yes. Yes. Well, even you go to the bank and they're like, oh, you want to open a college savings account? We're like, what?
They're 6 months old.
I know.
Yeah. Well, I do remember when I only had 2 children. I think they may have been about 4 and 2. I remember talking with a friend who had started college funds for her kids and planned to have them fully funded by the time their kids went to college, and they were going to be paying, I think, just about every dime of the college experience. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, first, that seems overwhelming.
Right.
Second, I don't know if we would be able to do that. And third, I kind of thought to myself, do I need to do that? Like, is that my
job? Those are good questions, right? You do have to ask yourself those things because honestly, I feel like it's also child by child. Like, not every kid is the same. And some kids, if given the opportunity, can earn scholarships.
Sure.
And some kids can't.
Right.
or won't. And so I don't know, like there are different ways to handle college. And now, like in Tennessee, we have the beautiful option of the Hope Scholarship and 2 years free at a community college. And then they can transfer to a 4-year program. And then you're only paying for 2 years of college. Like, I don't know. I like the questions that you asked yourself because Bryce and I both agreed that we didn't feel like that was a given. First of all, we couldn't financially pay for all 4 kids to go to like a 4-year program. We were still paying off our own student loans most of their childhood.
Right. Yeah. I do think a lot of that goes back to your family of origin. I remember when I was a senior in high school, I don't even know if I had given thought as to how I was going to pay for college. And my mom and dad, we didn't really have like a lot of financial budgeting conversations because we never had any money. There wasn't anything to budget. And I remember her coming and saying,
"It's like us."
Yeah. I remember her coming and saying, you know, we're going to pay for your room and board because we would have to pay for that if you lived here anyways, but you're responsible for your tuition. And I remember saying, okay, even though I had zero idea of how much tuition even was, I just figured they must know, you know. But I did end up qualifying for actual outright financial aid and some loans. And I graduated with my master's about $13,000 in debt, which I don't think is bad.
It's not bad at all.
No, I paid that off before Abigail was born. So in my mind, carrying a little bit of debt was not like the end of the world. I didn't come into it saying, oh my goodness, I need to pay for every single penny for these kids so they graduate debt free because I never had a lot of debt.
Right. No, I think you have to determine your threshold there for sure.
Yeah. But when we thought about our own kids, we thought, what is a threshold? First of all, we had 5. And we thought, what is a threshold of debt that we would feel comfortable with them coming out?
Right.
And I decided, let's not have them graduate more than $20,000 in debt. Now, that may sound like a lot to some people. I felt like it was doable to pay off.
Right.
And so we kind of looked at colleges based on that. Like, 1, try to get a scholarship.
Right.
And 2, you're probably going to be at a state school. You can look at private schools, and if you get a scholarship or you really prove that there's some reason you need to go into more debt than that, you know, we'll consider it. But, you know, state schools, they are a great deal.
They are a great deal. And I have to preface with like what I'm going to say with something that we are coming in later again to the game. I wish we had done this when Abby was still at home. But I think it's really worth sending your teenager through Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University, helping your child learn how to earn money for what they want, save money for what they want, and spend in a reasonable way. And so I agree with you, Marie. Like, I'm not totally like no debt ever. You know, I don't necessarily feel that way. It's not necessarily black and white to me, but I do have a very low threshold. Like, we don't like to carry a lot of debt. Like I just mentioned, we had student loans for a long time, and we don't want to carry that type of loan ever again.
Right.
And so with our kids, we didn't promise that we were going to pay for college. That was not a given that mom and dad were going to do that. We wanted them to figure out how they were going to pay for things. And so I've got one child that was able to get scholarships and she works really hard. I've got my second child who is taking a year off and working at a place that will pay for his school after he's worked there for a year, which I think both are great. Either way, they both have figured out how to do it. So we do help them budget. We help try to, I guess if I could put it this way, we try to give our kids the tools to live so that we're not constantly, answering when things go wrong in their lives. Like anytime, we've just said this, like you can prepare them for something. You can start early for something. It's so much easier if you set expectations up with them before it's happening.
Right. Yeah. Whenever I see those like statistics on, if you have a baby, you're going to have to spend $250,000 by the time they graduate from high school. Like, I wish they would get rid of those statistics because you don't have to pay that much money.
You don't.
And it's not a given that you have to pay for your child's college either. There are many ways to do it.
Right.
My oldest, she got, a decent scholarship, not a phenomenal one, to a 4-year school that, she graduated with maybe $10,000 in debt. My second oldest, he got a little bit better scholarship, and then he worked like crazy. He's never not had a job a day in his life. And
he is a hard worker.
Yeah, he wouldn't take any loans. He paid everything that was owed out of his own pocket or worked in the, on-campus jobs to pay for it, and graduated with his master's in 4 years, debt-free.
He's a different kid. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah. And my third child, he just did really well in the ACT, and he's going to get a good scholarship. He'll still have expenses for sure, but he's going to be able to do it debt-free if he wants to do it debt-free. It just depends on him. I mean, the tools are there. He can certainly get there. Now, if he chooses, a really super expensive school, no, he's not going to be able to go debt-free. But certainly if he went to a state university, he's going to be able to. So you have to work it. Steve and I, we set aside about the equivalent of what it costs for room and board for each kid each year. Like, by the time we give them some money and we keep paying for every bit of their car and paying for their cell phone and all that, we're basically paying the equivalency of room and board. And they are responsible for the tuition. So I feel like that is kind of where we landed. We're going to help you, but we're not going to feel pressured. Like, I'm not going to not live. I know some people that have taken like jobs when their kids were certain ages.
Mortgages.
Or extra jobs.
Right.
I don't really feel I don't feel obligated to do that.
Well, I think that there's this picture of expectation on parents, and hopefully our listeners can like have a pass by listening to you and I. You and I both, first of all, are very practical people. So like maybe to a fault.
Right.
But I think that when your kid starts to look at colleges, like you just have this like, oh, let's go visit all these schools. And then you just kind of expect this lifestyle of having a car and having a phone and having this whole college experience, and where you just have this 4 years of still essential childhood, but mom and dad are still, kind of footing the bill for everything. And it's kind of a rude awakening, or at least it was for my kids, when a lot of Abby's roommates, like things are paid for. And she's having to pay for her insurance and phone. And she's looking for a job. And, she doesn't have time for all of the events that everybody's doing because she is going to work. She does have time for some.
Sure.
But I don't know about you. I just feel like any way that they can experience real life earlier so that they can, develop some more responsibility. I'm all about that. I'm like, I don't know.
Especially
we didn't provide that.
While they still have mom and dad as a safety net. If one of my
Yes.
kids came to me and said, my car blew up by the side of the road and I really need
Yeah.
help buying another one, or, oh my goodness, I can't make my tuition payment, we are certainly available
Yeah.
to help.
Right.
But I do think, that you get to a point in life where you need to be supporting yourself. So moving in incremental steps towards that is a good idea.
That's a good way to put that. And Bryce and I have always said that we don't tell our kids sometimes that we've stashed money away just in case. For them, they don't know.
Do they listen to this podcast?
Just close your ears. Only one of them does. And that's like every once in a while.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know if my boys are ever going to listen to the podcast.
Well, then they're missing out.
They have no idea there might be money sitting there.
Yeah. Well, I do think that we all want to see our kids succeed and we want to provide them the tools. And so every family is going to go about this process differently.
Right. Like I can't guarantee that Bryce and I can financially have that money sitting there all the time. Like we can't guarantee our own future.
Right.
Let alone providing our kids with a particular experience.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So if there are things happening even in our life that we make our kids aware, look, things are going to be tighter.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're going to want to look for a job.
Right. Right. Which we didn't really touch on, and I'm not sure how much time we have left, but we need to say, I'm pro-teen job.
Okay, me too. I think that's probably pretty
obvious.
You're like, yeah, we're not paying for that. You're going to have to pay for that.
Now, while my kids, if my kids have been involved in sports during the school year, I have been not as eager for them to have jobs because I think it can be hard to keep up with sports, a job, and your schoolwork. But every summer, they need a job. I mean, you get out there and you find a job. And hopefully it's one that'll take you on weekends and school breaks if you're going to be doing sports.
I totally agree. And I think there's a lot of different types of jobs out there that kids can do. And so I do think that there's, you can kind of do it in different types of seasons. But I have a kid coming up right now, my 14-year-old, that he doesn't want to try out for the basketball team because he wants to work. He loves earning money. And I'm seriously now saying, no, you need to work a little less and you need to try out for the basketball team. But I mean, again, it's like kid by kid. One kid, I'd be like, you need to get your butt to work. And another kid, I'm like, no, you need to have a little more fun. But
I will just say that teenage jobs, they give structure, purpose. I've seen every single one of my kids grow and learn and become better people by having had different jobs.
Okay, well, we are on the same page with that, sister. I feel the exact same way.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll even confess on the podcast that I have once or twice, maybe more than that, even actually filled out the job applications just to get the kid there. And then they have to actually go to the interview. But I say that that's okay for moms to do. Just get your kid to the interview. They'll take it from there.
Right. I remember you telling me that. That cracked me up. And I can see doing that with somebody. And then Jacob, I didn't even know he applied.
Right.
He just did.
Yeah. Don't wait for your kid to come to you. Just apply places and tell them they have an interview.
By the way, you have an interview?
Oh, well, this has been fun. I would love to hear from listeners. If you guys have done things differently or I mean, like I said, I still have 3 in the house. I have already backed myself into a corner on the cars. Let me know if you think there's a way I can get out of this.
I know, right? Talk to us in a year. We might have a completely different plan.
All right. Well, before we go, Mindy, let's do I'm a Fan.
I am a fan again of Amazon.
All right.
Okay, so we ordered something. Of course, we're all ordering a bunch of stuff online these days. It was a food item, and it showed that it had been delivered, but it had not. We never received it. So I'm looking all over. Usually it's really easy on Amazon to return. And I've even talked about walking and dropping the item off at Kohl's to return it.
Sure.
Well, when the item doesn't show up, and I'm like, what do I do? Well, it took me a little bit, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. I could never find how to return it because it would say this item is not returnable because it was food.
Oh.
Okay, so I'm looking everywhere on the site. Finally go to the Amazon chat feature, and it is seriously like an automated system. But it, with the algorithm, it said, is this the item that you want to chat about? And it showed the food item. And it gave me 3 options for answers or other. So I hit the yes option, and it said, it gave me within like 4 interactions, this computer system gave me a refund for the food item that didn't show up.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
I had never used the Amazon chat feature before. So just heads up, if that ever happens to you, don't spend an hour looking for how to get a refund. Just go to the chat feature.
Exactly. Oh, man. Well, what was the food item? Now you have us all.
Oh, yeah.
What did you order?
I know. My house loves the Kodiak Cakes oatmeal because it's protein packed.
Yes.
So that could have been my I'm a fan, but that's a huge item in our house, and we can't always find it in stock at like Target or Publix or Walmart.
Oh, that's funny because I just bought the Kodiak Cakes pancake mix. It's hard to say. Kodiak Cakes pancake mix from Costco.
That's my favorite item to buy from there.
It's add water, I think, and I don't even know if it had an egg. It was so easy, and they're very tasty.
They are. They're only water and the mix, and they are very, very good. And I'll add like fresh blueberries to that or chocolate chips.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm a better mom because it has more protein in it.
Well, I know. And my son, he would never eat a pancake because it's just straight carbs. But when I showed him the package and it's protein pancake, all of a sudden he's like, oh, I'll eat those.
Same story in my house, Marie. That's why I buy it. And that's with the oatmeal too. My son that's very health conscious won't eat regular oatmeal. I have to buy the protein packed oatmeal for him.
Yes. All right. Well, let me tell you I'm a fan, Mindy. And I don't know if you're too young for this. Did you ever see Karate Kid?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I love that movie.
Okay. So anyways, we were trying to find something on Netflix, and Steve has been suggesting, have you heard of Cobra Kai?
No, I haven't heard of Cobra Kai.
Okay, Cobra Kai is like one of the most popular shows on Netflix right now, and it is 34 years after the events of the 1984 All Valley Karate Tournament. And it's the real people as adults.
What?
Yes. And so now they are adults and they're going to be training people that will fight. But it's got a really good story around it, too. And it is so entertaining. Steve, I didn't want to watch it. And Steve had asked me a few different times, and we were between shows. And he's like, let's just give it 15 minutes. I said, fine, 15 minutes. I love it. It's so cute. And it just brings back all those Karate Kid like soundtracks to your mind. Like when I was driving, I played I Am a Man That Will Fight for Your Honor in the car the other day because it's just like all these songs come back to you.
I think, that is awesome. I love those movies. And it's funny. That's so my life. Whereas I would remember the old movie, but I don't know what new is happening.
Right. So yes, even if you weren't like the biggest fan of Karate Kid, I am loving this Cobra Kai on Netflix. It's very entertaining and I really think you'll enjoy it.
Oh my gosh. We'll have to check that out.
Yeah. So watch it with your teenagers.
Yeah.
I've tried to get mine to watch it. They're not interested at all, but
bummer. Well, at least Steve's happy.
Yeah, I think you need that 80s nostalgia behind you to really enjoy it. So
they just don't get it, Marie.
No, they just don't. All right. Well, I enjoyed talking with you, Mindy.
Yes, this has been great.
And Julie will be back next week, listeners. And listeners, if you want to reach out and contact us this week, let us know how you are handling finances in your house with teens. You can contact us on Midlife Matters Podcast on Instagram or midlifematterspodcast@gmail.com if you want to email us. All right, Mindy, I hope you have a great week.
Hey, you too, Marie.
All right, we'll talk to you later. Bye.
All right, bye.
We're so happy you joined us today. You can find the show notes for this episode at midlifematterspodcast.com. Also, please tell a friend about the show and help them hit the free subscribe button on their favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast. That's where we post pictures and stories about all the things we talk about in each episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.